Okay, we're live.
Okay.
So tell everyone your name.
My first name is Dee. My last name is Karleskint.
And this is a story about your mum.
Yes.
Okay, talk us through what happened.
Okay. Well, Mom was...
No, it doesn't matter. It's okay. It's sad.
She was 92 and living in assisted living. And they, of course, came out and wanted her to have the initial shots, which she did. I tried so hard to tell her not to do it. But it meant that she'd be locked in her room by herself all the time, and I know that was a big part of it.
Is that what they do to people who don't vaccinate? They
Yeah.
lock them in their room?
Yeah, they can't mingle with the residents. So, and they did that for quite a while when they locked all of us down. But then they slowly, once everybody got vaccinated, then they let them come out with masks.
With masks and they were vaccinated?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're in their 90s?
Yeah.
That's just cruel.
I know. And I tried to tell her, Mom, if you're vaccinated, why are you having to do? Well, that's what they tell us we have to do. And she was a rule follower. She didn't ever want to make waves. And so she had a doctor's appointment to check her blood pressure, and I didn't think much of it. And while she was there, it was like, oh yeah, you want to get your booster? And she said, sure. And that was on a Wednesday. She and I had a standing appointment every Friday to have a 9 o'clock call because I live out of state. So I called her every Friday morning. And Thursday, she was really sick. And I get on the phone with her Friday, and it was usually small talk, and then, we'd get into whatever. And she says, I might as well tell you right up front that I slept 23 out of 24 hours yesterday. I got my booster on Wednesday. I said, Mom, what did you do that for? And she goes, well, the doctor had it right there, and I just decided to go ahead and do it. I said, so how are you feeling today? Oh, I'm better, but I could tell she didn't feel good at all. Well, they tested her, and when she came back positive, she couldn't have visitors. And
So she's vaccinated and boosted and testing positive?
Yeah. And so my one sister, who was kind of her medical person, she talked to the nurse, and they said, well, she really should stay in her room and be quarantined now because she tested positive. And that really made me mad. But if she can, she was holding her own with O2 stats, but that went downhill on Tuesday. They called my sister and said she's in the 70s. We got to get her to the hospital. So, and they said, you probably can't go with her. Well, my sister went anyway. And while she was in the ER, she could be with my mom. But of course, they had shut down so much of the hospital, they didn't have rooms available. So now so I said, good, you're going to be with her more of the day, see how she goes. So they put her in a room, and it was just a basic hospital room, but they labeled her ICU. And we find this out later. And she was there from, until the weekend, Sunday. She was just distraught. She couldn't see, she couldn't use her phone, she wouldn't eat. And they put one of these big plastic oxygen masks on her because she wasn't keeping the little tube in her nose. And I think she felt that was a ventilator. And I did get my sister and her to agree, no remdesivir, and no ventilator. But I think Mom thought that's what that was. That, or it was very claustrophobic for her. One of it. But anyway, it kind of threw her off. And my sister finally did get a hold of her on the telephone, and she said, I just want to die. So we put her in the hospital. And all of a sudden, in the same room, they never moved her. She could have 5 visitors at once. And they put her in a drug-induced coma. So by the time I got there next day, she was just out. And there was the hospital nurses, and then there were the hospice nurses. And we were getting conflicting stories. One said she should be on oxygen and pain medicine. The other one says, no, we need to get her off the oxygen. And so after about 24 hours, they pulled the oxygen, and she was breathing fine. You know what happened? But I'm a nurse, and I knew one of the first signs that death was imminent was that your feet start to go blue. And so on Tuesday, I pulled the covers back and I looked, and feet looked pretty good. So I thought, well, here we are. Well, Tuesday afternoon before I left and my other sisters came in, I looked again, and the bottom of her left foot started to turn blue. So I thought, okay, here we go. But I didn't say anything. And I go back Wednesday and I look, and here the right foot's pink, warm, totally normal. But the bottoms of her toes on the left foot were getting bluer. And so the hospitalist came in and one of the nurses came in, and I asked both of them, I said, what gives? And they said, oh, that's what happens when people die. And I said, yeah, but I think this is a little different. So I pulled the covers back the first time, and then they looked at it, and they just kind of went, oh. And the nurse said, well, I'll have to tell the doctor. The doctor walked out and said nothing. Well, I knew what was going on. So later that day, or the next day, a different hospice nurse came in, had a different floor nurse, asked them all. And by now, all of her toes are blue. Right foot's pink and warm. And by the time she died on Saturday, that foot was black to the ankle. And nobody ever came and said what was going on. And I know she had a clot. I just know she had a blood clot. Nobody will tell me different. But I couldn't get family to do autopsy, and they had her cremated. So we have no proof. But I know that's what happened. The other foot at death was warm and pink. I think they gave her more morphine than she could handle, and it just finally, which put her out of her misery. But nobody would talk to you, and the fact that you could not see her for 5 days when she was alert. Mom had a better memory than I did, and while she was there, nobody could visit. So the last day, we asked about wearing these gowns, because there was a rule that when you tested positive, you went 10 days and then you were clear. You didn't have to do all the sterilization stuff. And we were to that point from when she tested. And so we asked the nurse, well, why are we still doing this? Well, because she's got COVID. I said, well, technically not. And she said, well, let me check, because we put the 10-day thing to her. Well, she came back and she goes, well, when you're admitted into ICU, it's 20 days before you can stop the sterilization process and wearing gowns going into the room. I said, ICU? I said, that's a bed and a dresser. That was it. Well, she was labeled as ICU.
So she did everything we were all told to do.
Yes.
She complied. She got vaccinated, she got boosted.
Yes.
Then she got COVID.
Yes.
And then she died.
And she died.
Well, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. It's I have yet to cry like this. So I'm needing to do this, I guess. But yeah, I've been so angry because I had ivermectin. I had everything she needed. I had the ventilator. We had the mixture to do the inhalation. I could have, while she was still in assisted living, I could have stuck up there and did this for her. But I got pushed back, and I had no medical authority.
I'm sorry.
So it was, it's very frustrating when you know you can do something and then you can't. So anyway, that's my story.
But thank you so much for telling the story. I'm really sorry.
You're welcome.
Maybe the tears needed to flow, and it's just, you can feel a lot of emotion in here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories already being told.
The energy.
There's the memorial with all these pictures around you. We're going to put your mom
Perfect.
in here.
Perfect.
To...
And I sent it to the gentleman that
Thank
was
you.
in here earlier, so he already has that. So
Autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues CHD has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.